Hey guys, Manny the author here, back to you with another video. And for this video, I kind of had some ideas already, and I want to talk about Dragon Ball Sparkling Zero. I spent, I don't know, how was it, like $70 to play Sparkling Zero? So let's talk about it. Comparing this to Fighting C, you can kind of see it as the level 2 entry, or the amount of learning you have to put forth in the first place before you can kind of start playing. So for example, to learn how to play Dragon Ball Fighters, as it's a more traditional fighting game, you would have to learn into the counters, the individual character kits, and the different abilities you can do with everybody, right? But because that is not present in Sparkling Zero, you don't have that bite to it. Sure, you'll have the space to learn the game is gonna be longer than the space to get to playing it. The accessibility would be different. The level of investment you have to put into playing Sparkling Zero is significantly lower than Fighter C, but Fighter C is extremely rewarding, as you can kind of pick a main and factor into all their individual frame data and master that character. This is compared to Sparkling Zero, where effectively you don't really need to pick up a main as urgently as with Fighter C, because all the mains play with a uniform taste to it. So all the characters are more accessible, but lose on that sense of engagement you would with a traditional fighters. This is kind of a thing, because these are not games to facilitate competition or the traditional gaming experience. They're framing devices for the IP. And so the framing device here being Dragon Ball, and you also have some other ones that do a good job, but their hook or their thesis statement isn't necessarily revolving around the actual mechanics themselves. It can put more in emphasis on the IP that carries the game. Even though this is a fighting game, regular fighting game players will probably see this as a very shallow experience, whereas in Fighter C, fighting game player will probably take that over Sparkling Zero, even though Sparkling Zero is more accessible. To a fighting game player, they already have much of the muscle memory and pre-education they would need to jump into a game like Fighter C with its complexity. This game does make you feel like a Dragon Ball character. It literally has all the Dragon Ball characters, but it doesn't make you feel like you're playing a fighting game. It makes you feel like you're watching the spectacle of Dragon Ball. Now, I'm kind of talking about Fighter C because I think it shows a good comparison to Sparkling Zero in the sense of depth of both of the game's balance. So, for example, even though Fighter C has less characters, because of the less number of characters, we can take more time in development to make them more unique or special, and that focuses on increasing player expression, which for a fighting game can make you really feel like you're that character and you're really gaining some type of skill or advantage by sticking with them. Whereas in Sparkling Zero, with such a large number to the roster, 188, uniformity has to take place for development to be feasible. So all characters end up feeling like each other in very superficial ended ways. And this has the result of making one game feel very dry and very repetitive, and the other game feeling very unique and very satisfying to play. Similar to the Sonic problem, in which they struggle to balance player expression and gameplay with on-rail sections that make the game look good through transitional and loading areas. So in Sparkling Zero, you basically have the perfect emulation of a Dragon Ball fight, where you will have the emulation of the powers, the fighting system, and you'll have a very accurate depiction of what the show is supposed to look like in game format, but it won't feel as rewarding as if you were to play Fighter C, which is actually a very traditional fighter with a Dragon Ball skin over it. One is more Dragon Ball and the other one is more fighting game, but the more Dragon Ball one looks the best visually, I would argue, but it doesn't touch that level of accuracy that Sparkling C has, especially when depicting the power that Dragon Ball likes to use throughout the show. And I couldn't understand how come this game basically came out and disappeared when, for example, Fighter C basically became an esport and has been around for years. I started playing Fighter C, I believe, like 2 years after its release, and sometimes I'm still playing it now because the character design is very fun to come back to and sink your time into it, because you will be rewarded by having a deeper understanding of every character and everything that everybody does, versus Fighter C, where you basically just have to learn one play style, and that play style will carry over to other characters. And while yes, that does make it a more accessible game, that accessibility loses gameplay complexity. So you kind of have this situation again like in Sonic, where you have a very nice game to look at, but you don't really have a very mechanically dense or rewarding game to play. That's kind of why I feel after everybody got their fill of the gameplay and the ideas that the game was presenting via the Dragon Ball Fantasy, everybody kind of got bored of playing it because it was too bland. Not to mention the fact that you have so many characters, which kind of gives you a sense of choice paralysis, and every individual character can be chosen up to as many as you want, you know, if you're playing the offload mode. And you kind of have a recipe for a game that kind of feels very bland and very samey and repetitive, and you get sick of it. It gets very samey, and you know, it's in a meta take, it kind of relates to the idea of Dragon Ball being this very simple, very straight to the point series, where I don't necessarily think that. I think that in its simplicity you have a lot of complexity, but this complexity is not reflected in the actual game itself, which is very disappointing. Now, saying all that, I still think that Sparkling Zero is the next Dragon Ball game, in the sense that it looks the best, it has the most characters, it has the most abundance of content. And even though it's not as complex as Fighter C, we still have Fighter C to go back to if we do want to engage in that complexity. And I say this because, as a perfect encapsulation of what Dragon Ball is supposed to be, it does give you that. It does make you feel like you're a Dragon Ball character. It's just in the way that, in the long term, how that kind of goes into an area where it doesn't feel as good to play once you get out of that initial stage where you kind of hide your fill, and it doesn't feel very rewarding to go back to. And I kind of feel like this mainly affects the longevity of the game, which is why it kind of, to answer my own question, didn't last very long in the public consciousness. And that's not to say that it's not going to. This is a Dragon Ball game. It's always going to be carried by the IP itself, but it's not a game that I will want to play every day. It's still fun though, and it still looks visually the best, so it's a W overall. Those are kind of my thoughts on it, and kind of what made me want to make the video, and you know, all my opinion and stuff. But hey, if you like this video, you can go ahead and like and subscribe. Right now I'm kind of still getting the channel organized, and I'm still kind of working through the details and nicks and knacks, but I think it's getting better quality wise. So I don't know, you know, if you like what I like, you can stick around. If not, it's cool. Thank you for watching, and stay safe.